Power and authority. Introduction. Power and authority are central concepts in political philosophy. Therefore, this study section will examine the concept of power and authority and the interrelationship between them. We will also examine the different types of authority according to Max Weber's classification. Finally, we will consider whether power and authority are opposed concepts. Learning outcomes. When you are studying this section, you should be able to define and use correctly the term power, distinguish the different types of power, discuss at least 3 forms of authority, differentiate between power and authority. Power. In any given human situation, one needs power to cause things to happen. Power could be generally described as that force or ability to make things to happen. In political philosophy, people normally want to describe authority relationship in terms of legitimacy and rightness, and power relationship in terms of the causal factors that enable one person or group of persons to determine the actions of others. Barry, 1981, page 68. The discussion of power necessarily flows into that of authority, as one often leads to the other. Power has to do, in its broadest sense, with the ability to achieve a desired outcome. Power includes so many things, starting from the ability of governor to promote economic growth, to influence the behavior of people in a manner beyond the control of the people. Power may be associated with the ability to punish or reward. Power could also be associated with the force to manipulate people, in contrast to influence people, which encompass rational persuasion. In other words, power consists of the ability to get your own way, even when others are opposed to your wishes. We may accept the state's power to control our lives in various respects, because we accept that the state has a legitimate right to use its power in various ways, and also because we recognize that the state may use either threat of coercion or actual coercion to force us to obey the state. Types of power. There are 2 different types of power, namely 1. Authority. This is a type of power that citizens are prepared to accept because they believe that it represents a justified, legitimate use of power. 2. Coercion. This is a type of power which citizens accept not because it is felt to be justified or legitimate, but because of the threatened or actual use of force. In everyday life, it is sometimes difficult to make a distinction between power in times of authority and power in times of coercion, because the 2 senses are interconnected. There are those who postulate that authority and power is one and the same thing, while some insist that authority is something different from power. Those who hold the last view argue that the distinguishing mark of authority is that those over whom it is exercised voluntarily accept it. We should also note that sometimes there is an ambiguity in the use of the word power. Indigo Women, 1999, page 18. In one sense, the word power suggests the coercions of unwilling subjects who do not acknowledge the authority of the ruler, but merely submit to him because of the fear of what he would do if they fail to obey. For instance, the sense is usually associated with military rulers. In another sense, which is a general or broader sense, to have power is to be able to get what one wants by affecting the behavior of others. Forms of authority. The German sociologist Max Weber has given 3 forms in which legitimate authority has come to establish himself in human society. These forms are charismatic, traditional, and legal rational. Charismatic authority. This type of authority has to do with peculiar form of personal ascendance, which an individual may acquire in a particular society, and which confers an indisputable aura of legitimacy over all his acts. This type of position is often associated with military conquerors. Examples are Napoleon Bonaparte, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar. Sometimes, these charismatic leaders may be dictators such as Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin. Sometimes, they may be political leaders such as Nelson Mandela, Jomo Kenyatta, Obafemi Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Kwame Nkrumah. Traditional authority. This form of authority passes from the personality of a dead charismatic leader to his successors. The individuals taking over from their ancestors may not necessarily possess the qualities of their predecessors. Traditional authority was prevalent in pre-modern societies in which certain authorities were accepted based on long-standing customs and traditions. Thus, kings exercised traditional authority because of the acceptance of the religions-based doctrine of the divine right of kings. Church leaders also exercise traditional authorities over their followers. Rational legal authority. The rational legal authority developed as a result of the gradual transition from pre-modern to modern societies. Authority in modern societies become less based on tradition and more upon laws and regulations, which citizens are prepared to accept, partly because they recognize that these laws and regulations operate in the interest of the citizens themselves, and also because the laws and regulations are product of democratic deliberations. Modern democratic states have largely abandoned charismatic authority in favor of an institutional legislature, bureaucracy, and judiciary that operate impersonally under a legal order. Hence, we can talk also about the distinction between de jure authority and de facto authority. De jure authority. This presumes that a person has right or power within the ambit of certain rules or laws to do certain things, but cannot do anything out the provisions of the rulers or laws. Indric Women, 1999, page 19. In this sense, the extent of authority depends on what are permitted by the rules, not the capacity to ensure the obedience or compliance of others. This gives the sense that we can easily distinguish authority from power, which is tyrannical or despotic. On the contrary, true authority is always limited by set rules. Power or despotic power is subject to no known limits. De facto authority. This exists whenever one person recognizes another person as being entitled to command him. Therefore, a person who has de facto authority stands in such a relation to other people that it can induce them to do or believe what it tells them, and the people themselves are convinced that they should obey or believe him. According to Indric Women, 1999, page 19, sometimes de facto authorities arises from de jure authority. This occurs where some principles of legitimacy give a ruler the right to command or make pronouncements for others to accept. If the people respect the legitimating principles, the ruler or official will invariably enjoy de facto authority. Distinction between authority and power. From our discussion so far, the two concepts are interconnected. Authority is a form of power that is legitimate and has moral content in terms of the recognition to be right. Power will only be seen to be opposed to authority if it is only taken in terms of coercion. However, the fact that we can move from de facto authority to de jure authority shows that power has different forms and that authority is just a variant of power and not its contrary. One can say that power involves constraints, force, subordination, and dependence, while authority implies consent, morality, will, and autonomy. However, the concept of power and authority are never found apart. One cannot talk about one without the other. Study section summary. In this study section, we examine two related concepts, power and authority. We show that power could be in form of coercion and could also be in the form of authority when it is legitimately recognized and used. We also stated the interrelationship between de facto and de jure authorities, showing that one can lead to the other. We examined Max Weber's typology of authority, which is charismatic, traditional, and rational legal. End of study section 3. Thanks for listening.